Shabbat Shalom. It is the first Shabbat of 2021, which means another secular year is behind us. Did you ever think you'd be so happy to say hindsight is 2020? And with the passage of yet another 365 days of life, I'm definitely grayer than I was a year ago. Well, with the hair that I have left anyway. I've noticed that the wrinkles around my eyes are a little more prominent. But I'm one of the lucky ones. I survived so far, a year of pandemic. And I look at you, perhaps a little grayer, perhaps a little less hair, perhaps your wrinkles too have become more pronounced in some places. But you are one of the lucky ones. You survived until this day, and you survived a pandemic. We survived another year. We've lost friends along the way. We've lost loved ones. May they be remembered for a blessing. But we're here. We're together. Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higianu azeh. We give thanks to the one who has given us life, sustained us, and who, despite the tsuris and vey that was so much 2020, allowed us to see 2021. We, my friends, we are profoundly blessed. We have enough food, enough water, enough shelter. We have access to health care. And over and above those blessings, we are blessed to be among those who can strive every day to embrace the silver linings of this moment, or of any moment. And it is with that approach very much in mind, with the need, the desire, the obligation to find the blessing within every moment, that I share with you a profound midrash I found connected to this week's Torah portion, the last portion of the book of Genesis, Parashat Vayechi. Until the time of Abraham, there was no aging, the rabbis of the Talmud teach, and the old and the young looked the same. Anyone who saw Abraham said, "That's Isaac." And anyone who saw Isaac said, "That's Abraham." Now we have to pause here in the Midrash to reflect on this. Prior to Avram Avinu, prior to Abraham, our patriarch, no one could be identified as old. Once you hit young adulthood, your appearance never changed. Even Methuselah, at age 969, looked the same that he did when he was 20 years old. We know this too, by the way, from the famous midrash about Sarah, Abraham's wife, that when she was 100 years old, she was as beautiful as when she was 20. And so, by the way, it has been for Jewish women ever since. No matter how old Jewish women get, they never look a day over age 20. Shabbat Shalom. Back to our midrash at hand. However, and our rabbis imply that Abraham must have been frustrated that people could not tell the difference between him and his son. That Abraham was frustrated by his youthful appearance might appear counterintuitive to us today. But what it means probably is that because he looked so young, Abraham was not receiving the respect from others due to someone of an advanced age. And so the Midrash tells us here in the Talmud that Abraham prayed for rachameh, for compassion, that he would undergo aging. As it is stated in the Torah, and Abraham was old, well stricken in age. Before that moment, there is no mention of aging in the Torah. So I want to pause here for a moment. The compassion from God for which Abraham prayed was to look old. And God, in God's compassion, showed Abraham compassion by making Abraham's physical appearance match his age. For some of us, we look upon our gray or our baldness or our diminishment in physical strength as something about which we should be embarrassed, or something that denotes weakness, or something requiring us to cover up. But for Abraham, aging was a gift of compassion from God, because it served as a reminder to those whom he encountered of the respect he and we are deserving. That we look another year older, then, according to our rabbis, is an act of compassion from God. Our Talmudic Midrash does not stop there, however, and herein lies the connection to this week's Torah portion. After revealing that Abraham was the first person in history to appear old, our rabbis teach that until the time of Yaakov, until the time of Jacob, there was no such thing as the illness and the infirmity that comes with old age. So as our patriarch Jacob sensed the end of his days was near, Jacob, like his grandfather Abraham before him, prayed to God for rachameh, for compassion. Jacob prayed that rather than dying in a quick instant, he should experience a more prolonged illness and infirmity before he died. And Jacob's prayer was granted. Our Midrash teaches, therefore, that those who are blessed with God's compassion receive in their old age, and especially as their end of days draw near, the blessing of illness and infirmity. As it is stated in this week's Torah portion, Parashat Vayechi, Vayomer liYosef hine avicha choleh. Someone said to Joseph, behold, your father is choleh, is ill. Prior to that moment in the Torah, no one had been described as choleh, as ill. For some of us, the thought of illness and infirmity of old age is something to dread or something to lament. But for our patriarch Jacob, the illness and infirmity of old age was a gift of compassion from God. How could this be? How could the illness and infirmity of old age be a gift of compassion from God? The medieval commentators Rashi and Tosafot answer that question for us. The purpose of such feebleness, they explain, would be to allow the children of the dying person to travel in from their respective places and to be at their parent's side at the parent's final hours. Further, this allows the parent the opportunity to instruct his family about financial considerations after death, as well as the morals and values which the parent hopes his or her children will inherit as well. The illness and infirmity that come at the end of life, then, are an act of divine compassion, because this decline brings together children and parents. It is the children's sacred obligation to ensure that their parents don't die alone, and it is the parents' obligation to ensure their children understand both the financial repercussions of death as well as the morals and values that are central to the older generation. While adult children and their aging parents are instructed always to be bound to one another, this relationship rises to a higher level of obligation as death approaches. Children must ensure that their parents are well cared for, and ideally, not alone at the time of death. And parents must be sure to communicate with their children openly and lovingly, and they must ensure that arrangements for the children are taken care of prior to passing. As we reflect in this new year on 2020, among the losses felt most acutely in the last year is the pandemic's denying the dying the chance to be with their loved ones in the hour of crossing from this world to the next. Among the images most troubling is the picture of the person gasping his or her last breaths while trying to look into a cell phone or computer to meet the eyes of those whom they love the most, of saying goodbye while being denied the physical touch of spouses, children, grandchildren, friends. Now, please don't get me wrong. Desperate times call for desperate measures. These were the steps necessary to keep healthy people healthy. And the debt we owe to doctors and nurses for the compassion they showed by making the digital connection between loved ones at the hour of greatest fear and sadness is a debt that defies language. But now, with please God, the worst of this pandemic behind us, as our knowledge of the virus has expanded, protocols have changed, and the vaccine, please God, will come to mitigate the most terrible effects of COVID-19. We are called upon by this week's Torah portion to reconsider the ways in which we perceive aging and dying. As our Midrash reminds us, we ought not to fear or to loathe aging, but to see it as among life's silver linings. Like Abraham before us, we should give thanks that we're getting older, and even that we're looking older. The outward signs of aging are a marker of the respect that we deserve. The gray and the wrinkles testify, hopefully, to the wisdom we have gained through the years, the kindness that we have shown to others over the decades, and the lives we have hopefully touched in our lifetimes. Moreover, let us remember to appreciate the end of those days as well. When we are stricken with the illness and infirmity that comes at the end of life, may it not be till 120, let us strive to appreciate that this time too is an opportunity to deepen our relationships with those whom we love the most. Let us instruct our children on the financial repercussions of our transition to the next world, and let us counsel them on the morals and values that we hope will be our legacy. And may we remember too our obligation to others in their greatest time of need, that we must be as much as possible physically present with those who are dying, offering love, companionship, and comfort as God calls our loved ones home. When we're given the chance to be with those who are dying, let us make the most of that time together, asking forgiveness and offering forgiveness, showing love and speaking words of gentleness and of kindness. When in the final days we are given a chance to say goodbye, that time is a gift from God, and those moments are silver linings for which we should strive to be grateful. And finally, always remember, if anyone ever asks you if they're starting to look older, the answer is no. You look just like you did when you were 20. Until the time of Abraham, there was no aging, the Talmud tells us, and the old and young looked the same. Abraham prayed for compassion, that he would undergo aging, as it stated, and Abraham was old, well stricken in age. Likewise, the Talmud teaches us, until the time of Jacob, there was no illness and infirmity. So Jacob prayed for compassion, and there was illness and infirmity, as it is stated. And one said to Joseph, "Behold, your father is ill." Friends, in 2021, let us find the courage to be grateful for each and every day, for each and every gray hair, and for each and every wrinkle, because of the heavenly compassion that these signs of aging represent. And when our loved ones or our own days come to an end, may it not be till 120, let us remember our obligation to come together with those whom we love, because those moments too are a gift from God of compassion and an opportunity for each of us to love and to be loved. In this new year, may our lives be filled with gratitude. May our hearts offer love and forgiveness. And may our eyes be open always to the silver linings all around us. May this be God's will. May this be our will. And let us say together, Amen.
Amen.
And Shabbat Shalom.